I am on a bit of a video roll today, but I think this one is important. I have just come across an article in the Daily Telegraph, not the print paper, the online version when you get MSN News and you get various sources coming up which you can comment on. And they're critiquing James O'Brien on LBC because he read out some comments from a caller who claimed that he heard these in a synagogue that he'd been to, which were supposedly dehumanizing language about Arabs. Anyway, there's calls for O'Brien to be sacked because he read these comments out that have been deemed to be an anti-Semitic smear because they're extreme comments, and it's the implication is it's falsely attributing them to Jewish people. Well, when you consider some of the dehumanizing language that is going on in Israel, in the Israeli government, is it really implausible that some Jewish people in the UK might indeed hold those attitudes about Arabs, about all Arabs? Um, it doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't mean that actually it doesn't mean that O'Brien agrees with them simply because he read them out. You know, the problem with censoring a presenter in this way, which is what the Daily Telegraph is essentially calling for, is that people don't get to see the source material for themselves. So if O'Brien was just to read out, for example, controversial comments, that would be too vague. Is it not better to just read them out and let people decide for themselves? Um, I mean, it seems that those calling for his dismissal are more offended by the allegations supposedly against those who made the comments rather than the comments themselves, and that's telling. I mean, there's no question that there is dehumanizing comments coming from the Israeli government towards Arabs in general. Um, no question about it. And of course, there's dehumanizing language the other way, the way Hamas talks about Israelis and Jews. But you know, neither two wrongs don't make a right. That's a flippant statement to make, but it doesn't. Now, I'm going to show an image um, I think it's from an unusual source actually. It's from the Daily Express, which is not what you would necessarily expect regarding this conflict. But I will give them credit. I will give them credit for giving this daring and very shocking cover image today. And I'll warn you, it's a disturbing image. It's a starving child in Gaza, and it's striking. I'm going to show that in a second, but I am so fed up of Israel's apologists. I'm so fed up of loads, and I think the Daily Telegraph is one of the worst offenders that just repeats Israel's narrative, just repeats IDF sources and Israel government narratives at face value without any sort of scrutiny. They have failed to talk about civilian suffering. That's why I think criticism of the BBC is unfair, because the BBC, unlike the Daily Telegraph, actually has covered this stuff sufficiently. I'm not saying the Telegraph has never touched on it, but it's very, very clear they have a very, very aggressively pro-Israel agenda. Um, so they decide to cover a story like that instead of covering the fact that children are starving to death, instead of covering the fact that hundreds of civilians are being killed every week. And I don't mean as like a side effect of the war. I mean directly killed. I'm sick and tired of people coming out with what about the hostages? It's awful what the hostages are going through. They're human beings who should be compassionate towards them. But I don't agree that the life of less than 100 hostages is worth more than the life of thousands of Gazans. I don't agree with this dehumanization of the Palestinian people and the sentiment that collective punishment is somehow okay. Oh, well, if Hamas just releases the hostages, everything will be fine. That's categorically not true because Netanyahu's cabinet has made it very clear that even if the hostages were released, they want to turn Gaza into real estate. So I'm going to show this image, and I do warn you, it's graphic. Um, no copyright infringement intended. This is from the Daily Express. The report, I should say, I'm not going to read out all of it. But the report is actually a message from the Disasters Emergency Committee, so it's not It's not a single journalist. The pictures by Ahmed Jihad, Ibrahim Al Arini, Anadolu, and they have a poll: should Israel now stop its attacks on Gaza? Here's the image. It's shocking, but people need to see this. I give the Daily Express full credit for leading on this. This is July the 23rd, 2025. That's a horrendous image. It's like those images of the Ethiopian famine in the mid 80s. How any Israeli government minister can claim there's no humanitarian crisis in Gaza. No humanitarian crisis? That's a young child that looks like a little old man because of the malnutrition. It's absolutely abhorrent. David Lammy's been very outspoken in his criticism of Israel recently, which is good, but and they threaten more sanctions. This is all well and good, but we need to just cut off all aid to Israel at this point. Otherwise, we'll continue to be deemed as complicit. Um, as for the prescribing of Palestine action, I don't agree with everything they do. I don't think driving a vehicle into a military compound is either sensible or harmless. But apparently, Ian Hislop's got into a thing because a woman held up a private eye copy. I understand it was in support of Palestine action, and an older woman, and she was arrested. Um, Clearly, this is going to use up police resources. Were people even expressing any opinion towards Palestine action? I think that was a big mistake by the government to just have a sweeping sort of prescribing the entire group as a terrorist organization, lumping them in the same category as ISIS and Al Qaeda and Hamas. That's clearly over the top. I do think where they engage in criminal actions, they should be arrested. I don't think vandalizing RAF planes is harmless. I've said that before. But I think the government made a big mistake by prescribing the entire group as terrorists when a lot of it is people who are genuinely concerned about this hellish situation in Gaza, much of it caused by Israel, yes, caused by Hamas as well. I'll always condemn Hamas. They've brought on the misery to the Palestinian people just as much as Israel has. But it's pretty pathetic to say that Israeli military action is not the responsibility of Israel, or to claim that there's no humanitarian crisis, or there's no starvation, or the response to 100 civilians being killed in airstrikes is to say, well, just release the hostages, it'll all be fine. It's the double standards of holding up an Israeli life against a Palestinian life. And another notable thing about all of this is the discontent within Israel itself is growing. A growing number of Israelis don't want to be associated with this. I don't believe Israelis are bad people. I don't believe individual Israelis are bad people. And I do think an increasing number don't want to be associated with this. A lot of Jewish groups have been outspoken against what Israel is doing, such as the Jewish Voice for Peace. So when certain right-wing Zionists and supporters of the Israeli government weaponize anti-Semitism, it's extremely cynical, it's cowardly, and it's a way of trying to silence debate. You know, anti-Semitic conspiracy theory should be condemned. So, people talking about Jewish world control, all that sort of thing, all that sort of spiteful anti-Semitic and conspiracy theory territory, that should be condemned and tackled. Anti-Jewish hate crime should be tackled. But I do think there are some, frankly, right-wing Jews who use this, they weaponize it to silence criticism. The same as some Islamist Muslims use the tag of Islamophobia to try and silence criticism of Islamic extremism. Um, it's wrong. Anyone with a basic conscience should be troubled by what's going on in Gaza. And for the Daily Telegraph to point fingers at LBC, to point fingers at the BBC, their coverage of this conflict is arguably the worst I have seen among any British publication. The extreme bias they have towards Israel is just so glaringly obvious. And everything starts with the hostages, the hostages. There's lots of Palestinians in Israeli jails who haven't had due process. Arguably, they're hostages as well. I'm sickened by what's happening in Gaza. I'm not about to go out and spray paint an RAF plane. and I'll never support Hamas. But this is about basic humanity. Anyone with a conscience should be troubled by this image. That's it. So I say shame on Israel's apologists. Stop lying that this is about self-defense. When you have Hawks and Netanyahu's cabinet talking about turning Gaza into real estate, that proves it goes well, well beyond self-defense. Stop deluding yourselves. Stop trying to lie to everyone else. So, in conclusion, I condemn strongly what Israel is doing. I believe it is a crime against humanity. I condemn genuine anti Semitism, but I reject the idea that criticism of Israel or Jewish extremism somehow equates to anti Semitism. Um, I reject censorship of the criticism of Israel or Jewish extremism, such as extremist settlers. Um, I condemn Hamas because they are definitely a part of the problem, not part of the solution. And I think it's wrong to completely dismiss Palestine Action as a terrorist group. I think that was very overreach by the government, but I don't support all of their actions. I don't think it's particularly sensible or productive to vandalise an RAF plane. And finally, I think the government should go further. I think they should completely, 100% halt supplies to Israel and let them get criticism from the likes of the Daily Telegraph. That will come, but it's the right thing to do, and it will be in keeping with many other Western countries at this point. And if Donald Trump wants to threaten us, he has to remember we're a sovereign country. Um, but once again, I'm going to show this image. How dare anyone say there's no humanitarian crisis? And finally, we always say the Hamas-run health ministry, independent charities, reputable charities have reported the situation on the ground. I frankly trust them more than I trust the IDF. Um, I'll leave it there, but I mean, I don't know how you could claim to be about human rights and be okay with what Israel's doing right now. It's repugnant.